I'm making sourdough starter. We use the starter to leaven our bread instead of instant yeast. I'm using a kitchen scale to measure out my portions, which is 1:1 flour to water. However, at this stage, making your starter, you don't really need it. You will need it, however, for when we get to making actual bread. So here's a tip. If you are going to use a scale, measure the water first and then the flour. It's so much easier to get an exact measurement of the flour and not the water. You can use any kind of flour to make your starter. Today I'm using regular white flour and whole wheat flour. This first batch is whole wheat flour. You'll notice that the whole wheat flour seems to absorb more water and your ratio becomes not 1:1 anymore. I don't know what it becomes, but you'll need more water than 1:1. When you're mixing up your starter, you're looking for a certain kind of consistency. From my experience, I find that the starter that's made with the whole wheat flour works better if it's a little bit thicker. So like a soft cookie dough or a really heavy pancake mix. For the white flour starter, I'm just gonna eyeball it. I'm not gonna use my measuring device. And of course I get it wrong the first time, so I need to add more water, then I need to add more flour to get it right. Doesn't matter, it's all good. It'll all still work. You're looking for a wetter consistency with a white flour mix. Put lids on your containers or cover them with plastic wrap, stick them in a warm place in your house, and check back in 24 hours. Before we go any further, I've got a few things to say. One, a disclaimer, I'm not a baker. I just love making sourdough bread and I've been playing with it for about 7, 8, or 9 years. Just look at the consistency of this white flour starter the next day. It's a little bit elasticy, that's sort of sticking together. It's sticky, but there's not a lot of bubbles, and that's okay. That's what we expect with white flour. Second note, you'll notice that I have dirty fingernails, and that's because I've been operating a greenhouse in my kitchen and my dining room and my living room, and I can't apologize for that. And so that's why you're going to see dirt on the floor and drying herbs on the island that I'm working on and all that kind of stuff. Now it's time to add to our starters, and because we're trying to multiply our sourdough starter so that we have enough to make some bread, we're not going to take any away. I'll explain that a little bit later. So this time we're going to basically attempt to double our volume. We have about a half a cup or less of starter so far in each container. So I'm going to put in the same amount of water and flour in each bowl. This time on our second mix, we're going to be able to get closer to that 1:1 ratio for both kinds of flour. I think one of the reasons why a lot of people are maybe nervous or anxious or scared or whatever, they don't really want to do sourdough, is they hear that they need to feed their sourdough starter every day and it becomes a bit of a chore. It's like having a new pet in the house, but it's really not like that. I've left my jar of starter in the fridge for, up to a couple of months without touching it, pulled it out, added water and flour, and it was fine. It rejuvenated beautifully. As a matter of fact, it had quite a bit more sour scent to it, and the bread just was so tasty with that extra sourness. I'm really excited to show you what has happened in just 24 hours to the whole wheat starter mix. If you could smell this, you would be able to smell a little bit of sourness to it. It's not off. It doesn't smell rotten, just a little soury. But just look at those bubbles, and on the inside, look at all those air bubbles. It's foamy. It actually even makes a sound when you stir it up. This is exactly what you want. This is an active yeast happening in this starter, even after just one day. This is why I like to use the whole wheat starter to really get things going. It's way faster. There's no right or wrong way to feed your starter as far as order of operation goes. I just find that adding the water first and mixing it into the existing starter makes it easier to mix in the flour. So I'm adding the water first, and I'm going to really try to get a 1:1 ratio on this whole wheat starter mix. Consistency of each of these hasn't really changed. With the white flour, it's going to be wetter, looser. With the whole wheat flour, it's going to be denser, thicker, still more like a pancake batter mix. Another tip here, and well, actually this is sort of a standard operating procedure, you're going to want to start moving your starters into bigger containers. The reason for this is because while they're brewing overnight and creating all those bubbles and whatnot, they are going to double in volume. The bread we're going to make uses about 800 grams of starter for 4 loaves. So you can do the math to figure out how much starter you need. So feed your starter every day, equal parts water and flour. Keep it covered and keep it in a warm place. You'll notice that it's getting bigger. You'll see some bubbles happening, and we'll make bread together in a few more days.